good everyone? Matt here from UK Nets Fans, and I'm joined as ever by Aidan and Cammy Anderson for another episode of BKT UK, the British Brooklyn Nets podcast. We're back for a second time this week, and if you've not heard it, do take a look back in your feed and check out our playoff rotation pod we released a couple of days ago this week. We were joined by Jack Manuel from the Brooklyn Buzz, and we went pretty in-depth on this roster, trying to figure out who's in and who's out of our playoff rotation going forward, looking ahead to this year. So it's well worth a listen. On this episode, though, we'll be recapping last week's games against the Timberwolves, Sixers, and Hornets, the shocking news about LaMarcus Aldridge retiring, and much, much more. Make sure you're following us on Twitter and Instagram at UK Nets Fans, the pod itself on Twitter at BK2UK Pod, and check us out on YouTube where you can watch all of our episodes back. With that out of the way, there's only one way to really start this week, and it's a bit of a weird one. On Thursday, LaMarcus Aldridge announced that he'd be retiring from the NBA. I've got part of his statement here. He said, "My last game I played while dealing with an irregular heartbeat. Later on that night, my rhythm got even worse, which really worried me even more. The next morning, I told the team what was going on, and they were great getting me to the hospital and getting me checked out. Though I'm better now, what I felt with my heart that night was still one of the scariest things I've experienced. With that being said, I've made the difficult decision to retire from the NBA. For 15 years, I've put basketball first, and now it's time to put my health and family first." LMA was a 7-time All-Star, 5-time NBA. And yeah, 5 games for the Nets, all starts, averaged just a shade under 13 points, 2.6 assists, 4.8 rebounds, 2.2 blocks. Lads, what did you make? Where were you when you heard the news that LaMarcus Aldridge is going to retire?
I mean, I was quite surprised to hear the news, and I think it certainly, well, the statement anyway cleared up a lot as to why he did perform so poorly against the Lakers. I think we all noticed him playing noticeably worse than he had in the previous games. He'd done all right, as you say, not a terrible stat line for someone kind of coming in at his age, obviously a very experienced player, but yeah, he got absolutely torched by Andre Drummond, and I think we were all really concerned about how he could have dropped off so much, but now it's become clear, and it is a real shame that we never got to see kind of LaMarcus Aldridge kind of fulfill his dreams, really. Obviously, he came to us in the hope of maybe getting that ring, something that eluded him throughout his 15-year career in the NBA. Obviously, as you say, Matt, a very decorated player, lots of kind of individual honours, all-star awards and kind of stuff like that. And yeah, it's a shame that we've lost him, and obviously it opens up a new roster spot for us, something that I think when we recorded with Jack on Wednesday, we were all quite happy that the team was finally settled for once and there wasn't going to be any more ins and outs. But now, just kind of heading into playoff time, we could have another new face in this team.
Yeah, I mean, first and foremost, it was just a huge shock. I mean, the first tweet I actually saw of it was from Shams, which I think was probably a bit of irresponsible journalism, actually, and he rightly kind of took a bit of a slating for it, because he just tweeted with kind of without any context, LaMarcus Aldridge announces he's retiring from the NBA. And when I saw that, first of all, I was thinking, right, you might be retiring at the end of the season. And then a few minutes after that, I think you put it in the Discord, Matt, with the statement from LaMarcus. And I was just absolutely devastated for him. I mean, it's completely the right decision. I mean, unfortunately, heart conditions for guys of that size, they're not actually that uncommon. And they do need to be taken very seriously, as we've seen players die from having heart conditions in the NBA. And I mean, it is just a cruel way for his career to end, especially for such an excellent career, and to cut it short and not on his terms. I think that's probably what's hurting him the most. And I think, especially when this was probably his best opportunity to win his first ring, while still playing a big role in the team, it's not like he came here and he was going to be sitting on the bench the entire time. He was going to be potentially the starting centre in the playoffs. And I'm just gutted for him, and I really do wish him all the best, because, yeah, it's such a shame that he's had to cut it short when he was probably on the brink of winning his first ring.
Yeah, it's pretty brutal. I mean, he was obviously, he wasn't the LaMarcus Aldridge of his Portland days, when he had that seemingly unstoppable mid-range jumper. Definitely in the twilight of his career. But I think he would have grown into a really valuable member of this Nets team. As you would say, chasing that championship, he's not just one of these husks of a former great player. He was still relatively productive, and as you say, he was probably going to play a really, really big part. So yeah, obviously best thing is that he's doing it for his health, and it could have ended a lot worse, I suppose. And I kind of think maybe with an athlete, if you get towards the end of your career and your output is dwindling, there might be a part of you go, I still got another year in me. Maybe I can keep going. And all of a sudden you just keep getting worse and worse. But maybe, if you talk to a doctor and the doctor's like, you can't play anymore, then maybe there's like a certain element of like, it's just so crystal clear, then that might help you come to terms with you can't play basketball anymore. So like, there's no thinking like, oh, maybe if I just, work out a bit more, like maybe get another team or something like that. So maybe the way he's had to be forced into retirement could be spinned as a good thing, maybe, but we shall see. But as you say, it's just like we spent a good deal of that playoff rotation prediction pod with Jack talking about our front court rotation and how that all fits together and how he had some really good sort of options there. But now with Chris Chiozza also done for the season after suffering metacarpal fracture in this Timberwolves game this week, we've got a couple of gaps. So there's not a lot of talent out there to replace a big, which then kind of asks the question, do we replace LaMarcus Aldridge with a big, or do we replace another guard to kind of go on ball handling duties? What do you guys think of that?
Yeah, I mean, again, it's a tough blow for Chiozza when he was starting to get some minutes in this team, and he was taking his opportunity. He was playing really well, actually. I thought it was weird actually because it looked like it was a bit of an issue that he was dealing with for a few games, and he was always playing through it. And then obviously it must have just got too bad in that game, and they've done the scan and saw the break, and obviously need to operate immediately. But I mean, in terms of replacing these guys, I mean, I definitely agree with Sean Marks on this one. He obviously came out and says, look, we're not going to rush to sign anyone. We'll wait and see what the team's like healthy first and foremost, and then we'll see what could happen. Because you could sign a player now for a position of need, say a point guard, and then in a week or two their job's completely redundant and it's a bit of a wasted signing. So yeah, I do agree with them in that aspect. And I mean, I've seen a lot of point guards names being thrown about there, and personally, it's actually not a position that I'm worried about at all. I mean, with Harden's return looking pretty imminent, and then apparently TJ's not too far behind them, I don't think there's really any minutes up for grabs there. And I think we've already got the insurance there with the three of them. So I think TJ is probably not even likely to pick up some guard minutes in the playoffs as long as kind of Kai and Harden are there, because they're going to be taking all the minutes there. At least one of them will be on the court at any time. And in my opinion, I still think the one position that's calling out is the position of need is a wing defender. Or potentially another big body at centre. I just would rather see them make a move for one of them, because I think in a few weeks or so we'll be absolutely fine at the point guard position. I mean, one thing that I found really interesting is a lot of the journalists have been talking about potentially bringing someone back that's already been with the Nets, just because it's so late in the season, and you bring someone in who can quickly adjust because they're kind of used to their surroundings. And I quite like that idea. For that reason, I definitely take Rondae Hollis-Jefferson back if Portland decide not to extend his 10-day contract. I think he's that type of kind of Swiss Army knife player, which could be quite important off the bench if we do need a wing defender to come in, And yeah, I think someone like that, where we've seen him play minutes at the 5 under Kenny Atkinson. So he's another body who can go in there and do a job. So yeah, point guard, I'm not too fussed. But yeah, maybe a bigger body like a Rondae Hollis-Jefferson or another centre could do a job in there.
I don't really have an opinion either way on whether we should replace a point guard or kind of try and bring in another big body at centre. We were also kind of looking at the names at centre, and it's really slim pickings. And I think there were very few names that we actually knew who they were anyway, and that's maybe just on us, obviously being so kind of net-centric. But there's very few names that I think you could say, oh, I've heard of him before, and he could maybe do a job. There's nobody really jumping out to me that can do that. As with the point guards, I think there is a lot more. But as Aidan says, it's when will they play? And yeah, it's tough, because I think some of the names are quite intriguing. Isaiah Thomas is one that's been thrown about, obviously kind of similar height and stature to Chris Chiozza, so that would also give us a kind of different option, really small guard. Then there's like say Jamal Crawford, Jeremy Lin, Quinn Cook, Shabazz Napier, Emmanuel Moody, and Dion Waiters. And thanks to Billy Reinhart for kind of highlighting all those names on Twitter. And I mean, there's a few names in there that kind of, as Aidan says, maybe bringing a player back who's a bit familiar for the organisation could help things. Jamal Crawford obviously had that insane per 36 minutes stat line in his kind of few minutes with the bubble. And obviously, he's probably not going to replicate that. But and then it's experience. It's another ball handler. Jeremy Lin's another, a few years ago was with us. And yeah, I think he's been wanting to come back into the NBA, maybe looking to kind of prove himself. So we might get a bit extra from him. But yeah, it's a kind of difficult one. I think Marks is certainly right to be being a bit patient with this one. Maybe something else opens up somewhere. I don't think there's any more possibilities for buyouts. But let's not forget as well, there's Spencer Dinwiddie. We still don't actually know what's going to happen with him. So imagine we bring in another guard, TJ gets himself fit, and then Spence gets fit and he's cleared for the playoffs somehow. It's a really tough one. I think if there is someone who could maybe play the 4 or 5, maybe kind of a small ball 5, just something a bit different, I'd maybe take that. But certainly none of the options that are currently free agent centres really appeal to me.
Yeah, absolutely. It's got to the point in the season where anyone who's not on a roster by now, there's a reason. Be they a name that you know of but have kind of fallen off, or be it a young sort of burgeoning sort of star in the making that just hasn't lived up to the hype. So I get what you're both saying. With TJ coming, I haven't seen when Tyler Johnson's coming back, but if he's back sooner rather than later, that'd be really, really good. And another great point about Spencer Dinwiddie maybe coming back. And yeah, I just don't think the centers are there. Obviously, we would love a big body that can defend the rim, but we haven't found one for the last year. So I don't know why we would suddenly find one now. And yeah, I think a wing defender would be really great. I think if you're watching this along on YouTube, you would have seen my face light up when Aidan said Rondae Hollis-Jefferson. So maybe that's a way to go. But yeah, really, really like loads of options. But yeah, great as you say that Sean Marks isn't going to rush. We need to see this team healthy and see where the gaps are. And then we will fill it accordingly, which is really, really cool. And yeah, so speaking of getting everyone fit and healthy and see where we are, guys, there's only 16 games left of this season. And the Scary Hours trio, I think, probably haven't played 10 games together all season. I don't know what the number is, but could definitely do with that number being a bit more. How much time do the Scary Hours trio need to gel going into this playoffs?
Hopefully not long, I think, is the most optimistic answer for this. As you say, I think it's 8 or 9 games we've all played together, and it's been a while since the most recent one of them. And yeah, I think we've spoken about it a few times lately, and I think the main thing is, come the playoffs, that all 3 are fit and healthy. There's no point thinking about how they can gel if they're not all going to be fit. I think that's the main thing. And I'd like to think, given, and I'm sure I've said this before, they're elite players, they should be able to just slot in however. And given KD and Kai have both shown that they can just kind of come back in off injuries without really missing a step. We've not quite seen Harden yet. Obviously, he's due back shortly. And if he can come back and kind of keep firing how he was previously, I don't think there's much to worry about. Obviously, I think it will take a game or two just to kind of get to grips with things. But these are 3 of the best players currently in the league, probably 3 top 15 players. If we just say KD and Harden alone, you're probably talking 2 of the top 5. If maybe that's me just being a bit too keen with my Nets fandom. But yeah, certainly we've got 3 superstars on the team, something that not every team has. And you'd like to think that these 3 guys can gel. And given the playoffs are coming up, I think we've got less to worry about as well, because the playoff rotation is going to be that bit shorter. So we've not got to worry about as much movement. And hopefully these guys will maybe play for a niggle during the playoffs in the hunt for a ring.
Yeah, I mean, I've said it a couple of times now. I'm not worried at all, just because of the standard of these guys. I mean, I think if we get Harden back this week, which it definitely sounds like we will at some point, I think that's definitely enough time required to get some rhythm going into the playoffs. I mean, despite the season absolutely flying by, I mean, it's crazy that there's only 16 games left already. I mean, that is still quite a lot of basketball when you think that. I think it's actually 7 games they've played together, because I saw someone tweeting about it saying that they've only played 2 weeks of basketball together, which is mad. But yeah, in terms of kind of 16 games, that's plenty of basketball, and there is still some real tests in there as well for them to kind of test themselves against some of the best in the league. But at the same time, there's still plenty of favourable games to get the scoring numbers right. We've obviously seen that with Kevin Durant recently. It's good to be able to experiment with certain lineups on the floor against some of the easier teams. And then we're still going to challenge ourselves against, say, we've still played the Bucks twice, and then we've still got a tough one against the Phoenix Suns. So I'm still in the frame of mind that I'm not bothered about them not playing too many games together, because I think they'll work it out. The reason why I want them to come back and play together is because I still feel much comfortable going into the playoffs as the 1 seed than the 2 seed. And I think even though I feel like the Nets could comfortably win against the Bucks and the Sixers over 7 games, I'd much rather only play one of them than both of them. And I think it comes down to that at the end of the day. And I think if we can get the Nets fully healthy, well, I say fully healthy, if we can get Harden, Durant and Irving playing together, then I think we can really go on a run to finish the season going into the playoffs, and hopefully we only lose a couple of games in those 16, because I think it could be quite important that we do get that 1 seed, even just for the players kind of getting a bit of rest in the playoffs during those times where some of the series are going maybe slightly longer than others.
Yeah, really, really good point about the seeding as well. Because especially considering we're like 1 game back from the Sixers, so we need to make up 1 game over 16 games, which is so doable, especially when you get these 3 guys playing together, hopefully. I put down in my notes that I would like 10 more games of them all playing together, and I've absolutely pulled that figure out of thin air. So I've got that isn't any scientific basis on that whatsoever. That's just something that I would quite like to see. But given like how quickly James Harden integrated into this team, I've just got no problem whatsoever. Like I've just got no issue. I got no there's nothing in my mind that says it won't happen. Because you got Harden sort of fitting in so easily, and KD has been around this team all the while he's been off or injured or things like that. And I'm sure they've all got a really big voice in all the practices they do have, and sort of setting the tempo and setting out how we're going to play as a basketball team. So, I think it seems, obviously from the outside looking in, it seems like it's very players play with like just more of a feel for the game rather than drawing up set plays and being too rigid in a system. Maybe it's more of a style than a system. So yeah, I've got no issues. It'll happen, but yeah, I would love, and I think just as a fan too, I think everyone kind of wants to see them a bit more together. But yeah, we shall see. Just before we get into the game recaps as well, there was a bit of wider NBA news, which we don't normally touch on. We're normally keeping it Nets on BK2UK, but Dwayne Wade has become part of the ownership group for the Utah Jazz this week. So I thought I'd pose a question to my co-hosts and say, if you could have one former player from a different team in the Nets front office, who would it be and why?
I'll go first on this one, Cammy. So yeah, I've actually went for Reggie Miller, who can be quite a controversial choice because he has some kind of interesting opinions. But there's 2 reasons why I've picked Reggie Miller, and the first of them is that he was a 1-team player in his career. He played with the Pacers for all his days in the NBA, and I'd like him to integrate that mentality into our stars at the moment, just to keep them around for as long as possible. So that's the first reason. And the second reason is a more personal reason. I mean, anyone who has the nickname The Knicks Killer is more than welcome around this organization, in my opinion. So yeah, I think he'd come in there, and I'd like to see him spark some energy into the rivalry with the Knicks. So yeah, Reggie Miller would be my choice. I like that.
So I've taken a bit of a different approach for mine. The person I'd like to see is Michael Jordan, who obviously already involved in the ownership kind of set up at the Hornets, but I was kind of more thinking of it from a marketing point of view. Just having Michael Jordan there, I think, would be a pull in itself to stars. You'd want to kind of, I don't know what Michael Jordan's like basketball-wise now. I'd imagine he's still got a few tricks up his sleeve, but just being able to speak with him, I'm sure any player would love to just speak with him. There's few players who've done as well as Michael Jordan. Arguably, none have done better. He's in many people's eyes the greatest ever. So have someone like that as part of the kind of ownership, I think that would be a real pull. Obviously, he's got his Jordan brand, which is, it's not a right brand that I think you can say. That would obviously mean probably some quite nice merchandise coming out as well. And yeah, I mean, I think it would just be a really big pool, and there's obviously a lot of just other factors there that you could consider. But yeah, they're the kind of main reasons for me anyway.
And obviously Michael Jordan, born in Brooklyn, so it's a homecoming. So that'll be a nice little wrinkle to that too. I again have gone a little bit different from you guys. I've gone purely business acumen from a former player. So this team has been built on getting the right people, smart people, making the right decisions in this front office. I've gone for Chris Webber. 5 times All-Star, 5 times All-NBA, obviously Sacramento Kings legend, but, played for the Warriors and the Clippers and some other teams. Made over 176 million in his NBA career, but he kept the ball rolling after retirement. So Weber owns an investment company representing real estate. He's done filming projects. He owns restaurants called Center Court. Dabbled in music producing. He produced some music for Nas, as well as writing his own book. So he's very business savvy. He was a heck of a player back in his day, and he was also in Uncle Drew. So he's obviously boys with Kyrie. He played the preacher in Uncle Drew. If you've seen the film, I think it's streaming on Amazon Prime. If you've not seen it, you definitely should. It's hilarious. But yeah, I think that he's KD especially, and he's got his own capital sort of investment company. So I think he could pass on that information like that, how to look after yourself after that post playing for all the younger players with how to settle your finances and stuff. And yeah, he was a bad man on the court as well. So just three excellent options, I think. But yeah, that's just thought. Let us know what you think if you want to get in touch. What former players you'd like to see don a suit and get into the front office. But that's all the news from this week. So we are moving on to the game recaps. This week started off a little bit later than advertised. Obviously, we were supposed to be playing on Monday against the Timberwolves, but the NBA released a statement. They said the National Basketball Association announced today that in light of tragic events in Minneapolis area yesterday, tonight's game between the Brooklyn Nets and the Minnesota Timberwolves at Target Center has been postponed. This decision to postpone was made by the NBA after consultation with the Timberwolves organization and local and state officials. Although our thoughts remain with the family and friends of Dwante Wright during this difficult time. So it's obviously a tricky one. It's obviously incredibly sad and gut-wrenching for the family and the community there. And I don't feel particularly qualified to really speak on the wider social issues, but it did have some basketball implications. Namely, rescheduling this game, it meant that the game versus the Sixers would now be on the second night of a back-to-back, meaning no KD versus the Sixers. Which had a big implication for the 1 seed. Obviously, we'll get onto that when we talk about this Sixers game. But yeah, so it was a bit of a funny one. There was a little bit of would Kyrie then come and join the team? But we sort of did all right without Kyrie. What do you guys make of the game when it did go ahead?
I mean, something that really surprised me about this one, I think it surprised everyone, was the fact that we've seen DeAndre Jordan back on the court in a Nets uniform. Obviously, I think it was 5 DNPs in a row, just kind of sitting there. And we all thought he was completely done. He'd been performing so poorly beforehand. And yeah, he came on this one, 20 minutes, 13 points, 7 boards. And I mean, not the worst showing on a return for missing about a week and a bit's action. And I think it's a performance that will certainly give Nash a bit of a selection headache, even more so now that LaMarcus Aldridge has in fact retired, so that there's minutes to be won there kind of at the centre. Whether there was maybe an idea that LaMarcus Aldridge could have been moving on, retiring. Maybe this is behind the reason DeAndre played. I don't know, but I mean, for DJ coming in kind of perform like that, I was pleasantly surprised. I think we all want to see, similar to what I said about TLC last week, we all want to see players do well for the team, and obviously sometimes it just takes a little time out, and that's a kick in the arse that some players need, and it's clearly worked for DJ, who came in and gave a good showing for himself, and obviously got himself more minutes in the games kind of after that during the week as well.
Yeah, obviously you mentioned it earlier on, Matt, about KD and how they weren't sure if he was potentially going to play or not because they may have saved him for the Sixers game, but they obviously decided to go with him in this one, and he played 27 minutes, and this felt like a game for Kevin Durant where he looked most like himself prior to the injury. I feel like the increase in his minutes gave him a much better chance to find his rhythm, and I think that I know they've kind of been ramping him up for like the kind of 15 minutes or so. And I don't think that's much use for guys like Kevin Durant. I know it's got to be done, but he is one of these guys that needs to be out there playing plus 25 minutes. And it was one of those trademark 30 plus point games where we've seen from Kevin Durant, where it almost feels like a quiet 30 points. Sarah Kustok always mentions it, but it's just when he's out there and he's making his shots, he's playing his game, he's not overdoing anything at all. And he was shooting 73% from the field on 15 shots with 4 of 6 from 3. And yeah, I mean, incredible performance from this guy. And I mean, I still feel like he's finding his feet. I mean, the odd turnover here and there caused by kind of the rust that you see from players who stop playing for 2 months is going to happen. But apart from that, he has looked like his usual self, and it will take a couple of games for him to find that sort of rhythm. And it's crazy to say that he's still finding his rhythm when he's putting up 31 points in 27 minutes. Aside from KD in this one, it was a really good night for our shooters. I think Joe Harris he had 23 points and Sham had 19, both over 50% from 3. So it felt like a night where the Nets could find their stroke, obviously with Kevin and the shooters, against a very poor catless Timberwolves where they were just kind of letting anyone put shots up. So sometimes these games are good for players to find their feet and get back into rhythm potentially after a bit of time where they've struggled.
Yeah, it's crazy. Like you say, Kevin Durant's got so much, he can get to such a high level, but because KD's max level is so high, when he is still ramping up, he's still absolutely incredible. And I think I saw a stat today, I think, where since his return, he's averaging more points than minutes, which obviously he did in this game, but that's over however many games he's been back. So yeah, really, really heartening to see. Yeah, it felt like a bit of a formality. Obviously, the Timberwolves are dealing with their own issues at the moment this season. Obviously, you say Karl Anthony Towns was absent for sort of personal reasons for this game. But yeah, a nice, comfortable win. And then that led us on to the Sixers game the following night. Unfortunately, it was a loss. It was 123 to 117. But, for Kyrie missing a game, he came back and absolutely went off. No KD, no Harden. It was Kyrie's turn to lead this net side as the sole member of Scary Hours. Reportedly recently converting to Islam, he's just sort of started the holy month of Ramadan, which means followers of Islam don't eat all day. It's during daylight hours. So, we've had untucked Kyrie, we've had masked Kyrie. I think, fasting Kyrie is fast becoming another killer as well. He absolutely went off. 37 points, 9 assists, 2 steals, a block, 10 from 10 from the free throw line in 33 minutes. Again, it was another really rough 3-point shooting game. The Nets only shooting 19% from 3 versus the 46% from the Sixers. However, we did have 4 other players in double digits with Jeff Green, Landry Shamet, Bruce Brown, and DJ, who we'll get onto shortly. But yeah, it was a funny one. I think I wasn't alone. I think I was expecting a bit of a drubbing from the Sixers. I don't know about you guys.
Yeah, I mean, the game kind of went that way for a long time. We were obviously losing quite heavily, and then to bring it back and only lose by 6 in the end, I think certainly gives me a lot of confidence heading to a potential playoff series with them. We've got to remember we weren't facing with our best team. They had Embiid and Simmons both there, and yes, we struggled with Embiid yet again, but similar to what we said about the Lakers earlier on, I'm wanting to be a bit more positive and let them worry about stopping us instead. Nobody's going to stop Joel Embiid. He's in the MVP race for a reason. He's one of, if not the best centers around at the moment. And yeah, if we can just have KD, Harden, and Kyrie, I mean, yeah, let them worry about them. Ben Simmons has obviously spoken a little bit. We'll speak about him a bit later on. But I mean, there's nothing that's really concerned me about this one. If anything, it's shown me that the kind of end of the bench guys are really up for it and really want to kind of prove themselves against the best teams. And I think that's fantastic, especially at the kind of end of the season. That's what you're needing them to do. Yes, you could have maybe done it earlier on in the season when we needed them, but yeah, it's the here and now that counts. So yeah, not kind of that disappointed by the result, even though it was obviously a loss to the team who we need to, as you say, Matt, catch up on.
Yeah, it was an interesting one. I mean, when the starting lineup obviously got announced, I was quietly cautious, and part of the reason was because obviously DeAndre Jordan was going to be matched up against one of the best players in the league, as Cammy mentioned, in Joel Embiid. And yeah, of course, Embiid finished with 39 and 13. But yeah, as you mentioned, he can do it against anyone. But to be honest, I was really impressed with DeAndre Jordan in this one. He came in looking motivated, and he looked ready to prove quite a lot of people wrong in this one. And I think that's probably one of the best defensive efforts we've seen from him since he came to Brooklyn. I think he ended up with 12, 14 and 5 in 26 minutes. I mean, talk about staying ready. You've got to think this guy's been sitting out, and I know he played some minutes in the games before, but to be thrown in the deep end against Joel Embiid, I think he can hold his head up high in this one. And is it enough for him to be in the playoff rotation? Potentially on some nights. I mean, I think they're going to definitely utilise the small ball where they can as much as possible in the playoffs. But when it comes to guys like Joel Embiid or Brook Lopez, if DeAndre Jordan's willing to put in efforts like he did in this one, I think I'm okay with that. I think if you roll out a lineup with Kyrie, James Harden, Kevin Durant, one of Harris or Green and DJ, I think they'd be okay. There's a bit more size in there to help him out in the post. And yeah, if he's willing to put in the effort like that, then that's fine. But I think that is the problem with DeAndre Jordan, is the effort. We just need to see that on every given night. And there's not long left of the season. So if you can come in and put in that effort for, say, another couple of months, it could be really, really important for this team.
Yeah, it's all kind of matchup dependent, isn't it? I think Joel Embiid's one of those more traditional centers where he likes kind of getting down deep and making you and being physical and that kind of stuff, which is a dying art form, I think, in the NBA. And I think that's those kind of matchups are the ones that DeAndre sort of does better at, weirdly. He's not, he hasn't got the foot speed to be chasing people out onto the perimeter. Whereas I know Joel Embiid can shoot the three. That's the shot you'd rather he took than banging down low. So it's like you say, it's matchup dependent. And yeah, I definitely think sometimes I think I'm a little bit sort of airy fairy with what I think about people, because on the one week I can be absolutely battering someone, and the next week I can be absolutely loving them and they got to start. So maybe that I need to take a good hard look at myself, but yeah, I guess that's just being a sports fan, I think. So yeah, really, really cool from DJ. Glad to see he's playing well. And then talking about playing well, we are now went to Friday, another W against the Hornets. We whooped them really, 130 to 115. And it was all about the three. That's back to you, Aidan.
Yeah, I mean, similar to the Timberwolves game with this one, this was another really good opportunity for the Nets to get their confidence back shooting-wise after, as you mentioned, a poor performance against the Sixers. And again, we were quite lucky because the Hornets were very depleted. I think they had about 8 or 9 guys on the injury list here. So yeah, they were really down to the bare bones of their two-ways and whatnot. But yeah, I mean, saying that, both teams were extremely good from three in this one. I mean, Miles Bridges went absolutely off. But I think it was down to the fact that defensively, both teams were a bit poor, but some really good shooting overall. And I mean, the Nets made 21 threes on the night, and as a team, we're shooting over 50% from behind the arc, which is insanely good. And yeah, the usual suspects were shooting well: KD, Joe Harris, Landry Shamet, Jeff Green, all shooting over 50% individually from three too, which is very impressive. But I mean, it was good to see Blake Griffin making his only three of the night after going off from three a wee bit. And then TLC, he actually made 2 threes on 40% shooting on this one too. And I think he actually played really well altogether, TLC. I think he had one of his better games in a long time. And as I mentioned, it's sometimes these games where guys can build up their confidence and then take it into games going forward. So it was nice to see everyone play well, really. And yeah, it was just, I think there's going to be some tricky games next week. So I think wins like this are quite important.
I mean, the kind of bench mob doing the business for me was probably the standout in this one. You mentioned Shamit there, and he was the real standout. Also continued his superb form as of late. Off the bench, 20 points, third highest scorer for us on night. Shot 54.5% from free, with him sinking 6 of 11. He made the kind of contribution that we kind of need off the bench. And in the past 6 games that he's played, he's averaged just under 15 points per game, which is just under a kind of twice as much as points per game over the course of the season. So, I mean, he's certainly found form at the right time. And aside from that Lakers game where he got just 3 points, there's not much I can really fault him for as of late. Obviously, a player who I think we quite regularly bring up the fact that right at the start of the season, he had a few DNPs and he was just really not performing how we expected him to, but now he is. And yeah, certainly delighted for that. He wasn't the only one to obviously make a mark off the bench. Bruce Brown and Blake Griffin also made valid contributions. And as Aidan said, TLC actually played all right in the first of the threes that he hit, actually broke Twitter. Okay, maybe it wasn't entirely down to TLC, but it was rather coincidental that one of the most divisive figures in the next team at the moment scored a 3-pointer and Twitter went down. I don't know if you are buying into this theory or not, but yeah, bit odd if I'm honest.
It's too good. It can't be a coincidence. I love that. So I think Matt Brooks came out with a stat that was the last time that TLC scored 2 3-pointers in a game was the 18th of February. You know, we're now a good way through April, and he's still jacking him up as the world's most confident man. So fair play to him. And like we say, it's we're quick to praise, quick to pull people over the coals a bit. So well, nice one to TLC. But another one that I thought we'd mention is during the second quarter, Michael Grady noted that one of Nick Claxton's future goals was to win Defensive Player of the Year. So it's really weird to highlight this one because Nick Claxton finished the game with 0 points. But we're actually recording this on Saturday, so it's actually his birthday. So happy 22nd birthday to Nick Claxton. On the Hornets game, he finished with 9 rebounds, 2 assists, 2 steals, and a block. He had a plus 14 on the box score. We've always waxed lyrical about Claxton, especially over the second half of this season. Of being high energy, switchy. He's got obviously that massive wingspan. He can guard multiple positions. But as far as Defensive Player of the Year, I still think he needs to improve a lot. He still commits sort of more than 2 fouls a game. But I think what we've also said is his mistakes are usually from overexerting himself rather than like a lack of effort or like a low IQ sort of brain fart moment. I definitely think that he can get there. What I like to see from Claxton is that that seems to be what he wants to do as well. He seems really locked in on sort of has that defensive mindset, and that's kind of what he prides himself on. As much as in the pick and roll, I don't think anyone could physically dunk a ball harder than he can, because he really does wail on the rim when he likes to finish an alley-oop, which I love to see. But yeah, Defensive Player of the Year in his midst, that could be a nice little wrinkle to Nick Claxton's career coming through. But that actually takes us on quite nicely to our listener questions. So if you ever have a question you want us to answer on BK2UK, shoot us a message on Twitter at BK2UKPod or at UK Nets Fans, and we'll answer it on the pod. We love listening to what you guys have to say. But this was a very, very simple one from Sam in our Discord server. He merely says, Ben Simmons, discuss. And this did get quite a lot of attention in our Discord server. And I got my phone up here, so I'm going to read a couple of the things that some of the lads have said. Someone has said, Elliot from Hoopin' and Luton has just said elite. Can't really argue at that. Theo, friend of the pod, from Met the Criteria, said great player, bell end of an individual, which isn't bad. So I'll let you guys go first because I've got opinions about Ben Simmons, but I'll let you guys go first.
So I think I should start by saying that he's undoubtedly a talented player and still relatively early on in his career and will get better, but going to get it right out there at the start as well. Kyrie's a better player. Now, Ben Simmons, obviously, after the kind of matchup, was going on about, oh, I guarded Kyrie to high level. Nobody can guard Kyrie to high level like me. And I mean, he's not wrong. Not many can guard Kyrie to high level. But if guarding someone to high level means you still get 37 points, maybe I've misunderstood what high level guarding is. In the days since, we've also seen Nick Wright claim that you'd rather have Simmons over Kyrie. Now, even taking off my Nets tinted specs, I'd still rather Kyrie, a player who's won a ring, over someone who hasn't. I mean, that's ultimately what counts at the end of the day, not, oh, I managed to guard someone and limit them to, 37 points. Kyrie's almost averaging twice as many points as Ben is this season. Also has a greater win score rating of 5.8 to 4.8. So that shows that he's clearly the better player when he's getting more kind of win shares, and also has a better efficiency rating. Kyrie's is 24.9 at the moment. Simmons is 17.9. Quite a gap. And I mean, I don't really see how many can see Simmons as the better player. And I think his comments were maybe a bit ill-advised. There were obviously a few kind of comments made on Twitter, and one of the things when he dunked in the game, and it was a pretty meaningless dunk. I'd seen someone tweet something saying, watch him put this on Instagram with like the kind of, I don't know what you'd like thing where, as you expertly showed there, Matt, that kind of emoji, and little, like, a few hours later, Ben Simmons done exactly that. So it's weird. And Kyrie, better player for me on this, but Ben Simmons is definitely a decent player.
Yeah, I mean, if we're going to talk about the comparison between Ben Simmons and Kyrie, one, it's a bit of a stupid comparison. I don't know how that's going on nationally televised programs in America, that they're going on and debating that, because it's like debating a wall. And I'd definitely take Kyrie over Ben Simmons. And in terms of Ben Simmons as a person, I think it goes back with Nets fans to obviously the playoff run, and when Joel Embiid elbowed Jarrett Allen in the face, which he should have been ejected after that, but he wasn't. And then they went on the press conference and Ben Simmons was laughing his head off. I mean, I think that shows a lot about Ben Simmons. And he's probably one of the more cocky players in the league that are averaging 15 points per game and that have never won a championship. So, he's a good player, and he's obviously came out and said that he thinks he should be Defensive Player of the Year. For me, no. If you have a look at some of his matchups, I mean, he obviously, Kyrie got 37 points while fasting on Ramadan against him, and then the other night as well, he was marking Paul George, and he got another 37 points. So should that be happening if you're Defensive Player of the Year? I don't think so. He is a good player in terms of getting steals and being in the right positions at the right time, but he is quickly becoming the villain of this season, and it should be an interesting matchup if the Nets come across him in the playoffs. I've always kind of said that LeBron's public enemy number one, just due to the fact that I think he's one of the biggest obstacles that the Nets have in terms of winning a chip this year. But I think Ben Simmons is now public enemy number one, and I can't wait to smoke them in the playoffs.
Yeah, he had something, I think it was in GQ, where he had an interview saying, I tell them all the time, I'm Defensive Player of the Year. I'm not even questioning it right now. I know I am. It's a fact. I hate that, like, self-appointed, I've already won it sort of attitude. It just comes off arrogant, and I love confidence and stuff like that, and a really like visualizing what you want to achieve and all that kind of stuff, and saying that just comes off super arrogant, and I hate it. I think that's a perfect way you said he's a very, very cocky bloke for a guy that's averaging 15 points a game. And he's only got out of the first round twice. I know he's obviously young in his career, but it's one of them. It's just, I forgot, I think it was Chris Broussard or something that said, I'm not taking tips on winning from Ben Simmons because he hasn't won nothing at all. So I think, especially even when it comes, like, talking about comparisons as well, like, you can say that obviously, as you quite rightly say, Cammy, Ben Simmons is an absolutely elite defender. But when it comes to the playoffs, I think Simmons only being able to score 14 points a game and not shooting threes is going to hit a ceiling. And I think, Kyrie's better on offense than Ben Simmons is on defense, almost, potentially. And I think good offense beats the good defense 9 times out of 10. So yeah, I did. I definitely got a little bit wound up by that comparison when I saw it online. So let us know what you think, as ever. If you're listening back to this, let us know what you think about the debate. But all we have to do now on this episode is to look ahead to next week. As I say, we're recording this on Saturday night, so by the time you hear this, we would have already played the Miami Heat. Then on Tuesday, we face the Pelicans. Then a back-to-back on Wednesday, we face the Raptors. Then on Friday, we finally come back to Barclays for a game against the Celtics. Gents, how do you think we'll fare next week?
I've got us down going 3-1 in this one. I'm just not confident about that back-to-back in the middle of the week. I think it's going to be another one of these mammoth resting nights in the Nets, and I don't think they'll take any risks on a back-to-back. And I think that'll probably include Kevin Durant. And if we have James Harden back on Tuesday night against the Pelicans potentially, I definitely think he'll be resting on the Wednesday as well. So I think that could be one that we would drop. Toronto are obviously a funny matchup for us. They always seem to just shoot incredibly. Kyle Lowry turns into Michael Jordan when he plays against us on that matchup. So yeah, I can see us potentially dropping that one. In terms of the rest of the week, I think we take the Heat game on Sunday night. I'm not concerned despite the reinforcements, and I think we tend to step up our game against better teams in the league. And I think as long as the team majority of them are healthy and we go out with a mostly full lineup, then I think we'll be fine. I mean, obviously with the Pelicans game, no LaMarcus Aldridge to guard Zion this time, unfortunately. I thought he'd done a fantastic job last time, so I'd like to see Blake Griffin get some good minutes on Zion. I think he handled him quite well too. And I'd like to see Kevin Durant on Brandon Ingram purely for just a really entertaining matchup. And I think that could be quite a high-scoring affair in that game altogether. But I think we'll win that one. And then finally, the Celtics game, another one which I think could be a really high-scoring affair. Hopefully, fingers crossed, we get Kyrie, Harden, Durant versus Kemba, Brown and Tatum, which would be absolutely great viewing for a Friday night. And yeah, I think we're going to take that one too. So 3-1, probably a bit cautious. I think many people would like to see us winning all of those games, but yeah, it just seems to be a bit of a theme at the moment that we're resting players. And if that's the case, I don't think we could be too harsh on the team if they did drop one of these games this week.
I mean, I think given our ever-changing injury list and the fact that we do have that back-to-back, probably I'm the same as you, Aidan. I think it will be 3-1. Had we avoided the back-to-back, the kind of Celtics game maybe been next Sunday, and then the Raptors game maybe the Thursday or the Friday. I mean, I think we could have been looking at 4-0, especially if we have James Harden back for the majority of the games. But yeah, I mean, I think 3-1, it's still a very respectable kind of tally to get. I think we're kind of knowing what to expect now for these back-to-backs. It's maybe not so surprising or disappointing or even annoying when we do kind of drop one of the back-to-back games. We just know that these back-to-backs we're just going to rest kind of everyone. We could maybe play it smartly. I don't know how the Nets are going to do it. I do doubt they do it this way, but we could easily rest one night and have the other available for the following night. And I mean, I guess it maybe just would show us how much we really want this one seed. As you say, Matt, 16 games left. Come the next semi-pod, that'll be down to just 12. So time will be running out. And yeah, it's maybe a case of we take the chance, we play with one less star one night, but have a star on each night, and maybe that can make a difference at the end of the season. But we'll ultimately need to wait and see what happens.
Yeah, nice. I'm gonna push out the butt. I'm gonna say 4-0, just to be play devil's advocate with you guys. I think I'm gonna go. So we beat the Heat. I think Jimmy Butler seems to be getting a little bit annoyed at his teammates. I saw he called them soft on Twitter today. So maybe there's a little bit of trouble in paradise, and that bubble has burst from last season. And then Pelicans. I think maybe DJ's going to step up. He's going to carry on this form, and he's going to handle the big body of Zion. Wicked shout about KD versus Brandon Ingram as well. That would be really cool. Obviously, both very. BI gets kind of compared to KD quite a lot because they're both sort of just so rangy and slender men. So that'd be good to see. I know you're saying about the following two, the Raptors and the Celtics, they're almost the old enemy, aren't they? So we got a lot of history with both teams. So it'd be nice to see a couple of wins against those, especially because you've got a day's rest in between. But, I think if all three of the Scary Hours True are healthy, and maybe we get Tyler Johnson back as well, as you were kind of alluding to, I think if we can sort of get a rest schedule out that 2 of the 3 are playing in each of those games, I think, we've got a great chance to take all of those, and that, that could happen. And I was listening to, I think it's Locked On Nets, that they were talking about, like, at how, and while touching all the wood I can, for Kyrie has been so, durable this season. Obviously, he's had his time out, but that hasn't been due to injury or illness, which has been fantastic. So hopefully we don't run him into the ground, especially considering he's fasting at the moment. So, I'm cautiously optimistic about this week, and yeah, I'd love to get us on a nice chunky win streak go as the season gets to the pointy end. But I guess we shall have to wait and see. That's it for this week. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.